From the moment I met her, I was drawn to her like a moth to a flickering flame. She was beautiful, with eyes that could pierce your soul. Her laughter was infectious, her touch electric. But beneath her captivating exterior there was a darkness, a chilling whisper that told me something was terribly wrong. I ignored the warning signs, blinded by her intoxicating charm. I dismissed them as quirks, as figments of my imagination. I told myself everyone had their secrets. Hers, I convinced myself, were just a little darker than most. I was so naive then, so utterly unprepared for the nightmare that awaited me, the nightmare that was my girlfriend. The first red flag should have been the way she smiled when we watched true crime documentaries. A slow, predatory grin that spread across her face as the details of the most gruesome murders unfolded. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just her way of coping with the darkness of the world. Then there were the coincidences. She always seemed to know about murders and disappearances before they hit the news. When I questioned her, she'd shrug it off, a mischievous glint in her eye. "A girl's got to have her secrets," she'd say, her voice laced with a chilling amusement. I tried to convince myself it was just a morbid fascination, a harmless obsession, but deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted, a seed that grew with each passing day. It was her eyes that truly haunted me. They held a depth of knowledge that belied her youthful appearance, a knowing glint that suggested she'd witnessed things, terrible things that no one should ever have to see. At times, those eyes seemed to look straight through me, as if she were peering into the darkest recesses of my soul. I'd find myself shivering involuntarily, a cold sweat prickling my skin. Even in the heat of summer, I couldn't shake the feeling of an icy dread that clung to me like a shroud. I loved her, I truly did, but there were moments when fear threatened to consume me, when I felt an overwhelming urge to run, to escape while I still could. Then there was the taste, a metallic tang that lingered on her lips after she kissed me, like copper pennies coated in something cold and slightly bitter. I tried to ignore it, to attribute it to the strange herbal tea she always drank, but the taste persisted, a constant reminder that something wasn't right. One night, as I lay awake beside her, her soft breaths fanning my cheek, I caught a whiff of something else, something faint but unmistakable, the metallic scent of blood. That's when I knew that the darkness I sensed wasn't just a figment of my imagination. It was real, and it was far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. The city was on edge. The usual hustle and bustle of the streets had taken on a different tone, one of palpable tension and unease. People moved quickly, heads down, avoiding eye contact, as if acknowledging each other's presence might somehow make them a target. The air was thick with a sense of dread, an invisible weight pressing down on everyone. A string of unsolved disappearances had left everyone looking over their shoulders. The police were baffled, and the media was in a frenzy, speculating wildly about the identity of the perpetrator. Each new report seemed to bring more questions than answers, and the city's residents were left to grapple with their growing fear and paranoia. The victims were all young, vibrant women, their lives cut tragically short. They were daughters, sisters, friends, each with their own dreams and aspirations. The community was heartbroken, and makeshift memorials sprang up around the city, candles flickering in the night as silent tributes to the lost. The sense of loss was overwhelming, and the fear that gripped the city was almost tangible. I remember feeling a knot of unease in my stomach, a premonition that something was about to go terribly wrong. It was a feeling I couldn't shake, no matter how hard I tried. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every unexpected noise set my heart racing. It was as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next tragedy to strike. One evening we were having dinner, a news report about the latest victim flickering on the small TV in the corner. The anchorman's voice was a constant background hum, detailing the grim facts of the case. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from the television screen, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The anchorman spoke about the missing woman, her face frozen in a cheerful smile on the screen. It was a stark contrast to the grim reality of her disappearance, and it made the whole situation feel even more surreal. Her eyes seemed to follow us, a haunting reminder of the danger that lurked just outside our door. My girlfriend, however, was unusually quiet. She was normally the one to fill the silence with chatter, but that night she barely said a word. Her face was a mask of concentration, her eyes distant as if she were lost in her own thoughts. It was unlike her, and it only added to my growing sense of unease. She picked at her food, her gaze fixed on the television. It was as if she were trying to decipher some hidden message in the news report, something that only she could see. Her fork moved absently, pushing the food around her plate without ever bringing it to her mouth. The tension in the room was almost suffocating. "They'll never find her," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. I looked up, startled. Her words hung in the air, heavy with a certainty that sent a chill down my spine. It was as if she knew something that the rest of us didn't, something that she couldn't or wouldn't explain. "What makes you say that?" I asked, a shiver running down my spine. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, strained and uncertain. I wanted to understand, to make sense of the cryptic statement she had just made, but I was also afraid of what her answer might be. She just smiled, a slow, knowing smile that sent chills racing down my spine. It was a smile that held secrets, secrets that I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment I felt as if I were looking into the depths of something dark and unfathomable. "Some secrets," she said, her voice soft as velvet, "are best left buried." Her words were like a final, chilling pronouncement, a warning that echoed in my mind long after they were spoken. I knew then that whatever she was hiding, it was something that would change everything, something that I might never be ready to face. Her words haunted me. They echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of the darkness that seemed to follow her. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear her voice, soft yet insistent, weaving tales of dread and despair. It was as if she had planted a seed of fear within me, one that grew with each passing day. They clung to me like cobwebs, whispering doubts in my ear. Each whisper was a thread, binding me tighter to the fear that she had instilled. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, expecting to see her shadow lurking in the corners of my vision. The paranoia was suffocating, a constant weight on my chest. I tried to shake off the feeling, to tell myself it was just a coincidence. But the more I tried to rationalize it, the more the fear took hold. It was like trying to escape quicksand. The harder I struggled, the deeper I sank. I told myself it was all in my head, a figment of my imagination, but deep down, I knew there was something more. But deep down, I couldn't escape the gnawing suspicion that she knew more than she was letting on. There was a glint in her eyes, a knowing look that sent chills down my spine. It was as if she held the key to a dark secret, one that she was reluctant to share. I found myself questioning everything, doubting everyone around me. It was the little things, the way she would pause before answering a question as if weighing her words carefully. The way she seemed to notice things that others overlooked, her eyes always scanning her surroundings. It was as if she was constantly on edge, waiting for something to happen. The way she seemed to relish the details of each murder, her eyes gleaming with a morbid fascination. She would recount the stories with such enthusiasm as if she was reliving each moment. It was unsettling, to say the least. Her fascination with death was more than just a passing interest. It was an obsession. The way she'd casually mention facts about the cases that hadn't been released to the public. It was as if she had an inside source, someone feeding her information. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it wasn't just information she was getting. It was something deeper, something darker. It was as if she had a direct line to the darkness, a morbid sixth sense. She seemed to know things that no one else did, things that she shouldn't have known. It was as if she was connected to the very essence of the evil that she spoke of. Her eerie expression, the way she would stare into the distance with that knowing look, It all added to the sense of dread that surrounded her. One night I woke to the sound of her voice. It was a soft whisper, barely audible, but it was enough to jolt me awake. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was dark, the only light coming from the moon outside. I strained to hear, trying to make out the words she was saying. She was talking in her sleep, her words a jumble of names and dates. It was as if she was recounting a list, a catalogue of horrors. I couldn't make out everything, but the names were familiar, too familiar. They were the names of the victims, the ones she had spoken of with such detail. I couldn't make out everything, but I heard enough to send shivers down my spine. The dates, the names, they all matched the cases she had been so fascinated with. It was as if she was reliving each moment in her sleep, her mind trapped in a never-ending nightmare. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead as I listened, my body trembling with fear. "He won't talk," she mumbled, her voice thick with a strange, detached amusement. "Not anymore." Her words hung in the air, a chilling reminder of the darkness that seemed to follow her. I lay back down, my mind racing with questions. Who was she talking about? What did she mean? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was in over my head. The whispers of dread had become a roar, and there was no escaping it. Her fascination with true crime bordered on obsessive. She devoured books and documentaries, her eyes gleaming with a disturbing light as she absorbed every gruesome detail. I tried to understand, to be supportive, but there was a darkness in her fascination that I found deeply unsettling. She had a particular interest in serial killers. She collected their biographies, studied their methods, spoke about them with an unnerving familiarity. I tried to convince myself it was just a hobby, a way to channel her morbid curiosity. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more sinister at play. They were just misunderstood, she'd say, her eyes gleaming with a strange admiration. Artists in their own way. I'd shudder, repulsed and fascinated in equal measure. I loved her, but I couldn't help but wonder what dark thoughts lurked beneath her beautiful exterior. My birthday came and she presented me with a gift. It was wrapped in delicate, shimmering paper, tied with a ribbon that seemed almost too perfect to untie. I hesitated for a moment, feeling a strange sense of foreboding, but her eager eyes urged me on. I carefully unwrapped the gift, revealing a small, ornate box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was an antique pocket knife. It was a beautiful, antique pocket knife, its handle made of polished bone. The blade was sharp, gleaming under the light, and the craftsmanship was exquisite. It looked like it had a history, a story etched into every curve and line. I ran my fingers over its smooth surface, admiring its craftsmanship. The bone handle felt cool to the touch, and the intricate designs carved into it were mesmerizing. I couldn't help but wonder about the hands that had crafted it, the lives it had touched. "It's beautiful," I said, my voice tinged with unease. There was something about it that made me feel unsettled, a nagging feeling at the back of my mind that I couldn't quite place. "Where did you find it?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. The question seemed to hang in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. She smiled, her eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and mystery. It was a smile that held secrets, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. "I have my ways," she said evasively. "Do you like it?" Her tone was light, but there was an undercurrent of something darker, something that made my heart race. I forced a smile, my gut twisting with a primal fear I couldn't explain. It was as if the knife had a presence, a malevolent energy that seeped into my very being. That night I dreamt of blood. The dream was vivid, almost too real. I was standing in a dark room, the air thick with the metallic scent of blood, rivers of it staining my hands, staining the pristine blade of the knife. The blood seemed to flow endlessly, pooling around my feet, soaking into the ground. I woke with a gasp, my heart pounding in my chest. The dream had felt so real, and I could still feel the weight of the knife in my hand, the slickness of the blood on my skin. The knife lay on my bedside table, gleaming ominously in the moonlight. It seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a silent reminder of the nightmare that had just unfolded. I threw it in the back of my drawer, unable to shake the feeling that it was cursed. that it was a harbinger of something terrible to come. The sense of dread lingered, a shadow that clung to me, whispering of dark days ahead. The metallic tang of her kisses grew stronger. It was a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath her surface, a secret she guarded jealously. I tried to ignore it, to pretend everything was normal, but the truth was I was terrified. One night, fueled by too much whiskey and a growing sense of dread, I confronted her. "What is it about you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What are you hiding?" She just smiled, her eyes dark and fathomless. "You'll find out soon enough, darling," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. And for the first time, I realized that her love, like the metallic tang on her lips, held a dangerous, intoxicating poison. It was a love that could kill. The air grew thick with unspoken tension. The metallic tang of fear, it clung to me like cheap cologne. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living a lie, dancing with a nightmare disguised as a dream girl. My gut screamed at me to run. One day, while she was out, something snapped. Curiosity, that double-edged sword, sliced through my fear. Her apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. And at the back of her closet, there it was, a door I'd never noticed before. The air grew cold as I approached. I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. It was ice cold to the touch. The door creaked open, as if disturbed after a long slumber.
Blech. Blech.
The stench hit me first, a metallic, cloying odor that turned my stomach. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with the weight of something evil. In the center sat a small wooden chest, its surface polished to a macabre gleam. I knelt before it, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The latch creaked open, revealing a sight that sent a wave of nausea crashing over me. Inside, nestled amongst crimson-stained velvet, lay a gruesome collection. Driver's licenses with smiling faces, now forever frozen in time. Locks of hair, each strand a different shade, a different story, and photographs. So many photographs capturing the last moments of innocent lives. Each photo was a punch to the gut. A cruel reminder of the city's missing women. Women I'd seen on milk cartons, their faces plastered across the evening news. Women who had vanished without a trace. Their eyes, wide with fear or glazed in death, stared back at me, accusing, judging. A chorus of silent screams echoed in the silence of the room. My breath caught in my throat. I recognized one face, the missing journalist who lived in the apartment downstairs. Her once bright smile, now a grotesque mockery and death. I'd spoken to her just days ago, her laughter echoing in the hallway. Now she was nothing more than a faded photograph, a trophy in my girlfriend's macabre collection. Beneath the photos, nestled in the corner of the chest, lay a leather-bound journal. Its pages were filled with swirling handwriting, a chilling testament to a mind consumed by darkness. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. Each page detailed a murder. Gruesome accounts written with a chilling detachment, locations, methods, the sickening crunch of bone, the sweet metallic scent of blood. All described with a poet's eye for detail. My girlfriend's words, they danced before my eyes like demons, each sentence a testament to her madness, her depravity. I read about the fear in their eyes, the desperate pleas for mercy, the way she silenced them, her laughter echoing in their final moments. Section 5, marked for death. Then I saw it. My blood ran cold, my name scrawled across the last page. It was surrounded by a heart pierced with a knife, a chilling premonition of my fate. Below it, a date circled in crimson ink. Tomorrow. My death had been planned, a masterpiece in the making. I slammed the journal shut, my stomach churning with terror. The room seemed to close in on me, the air thick with the stench of death and obsession. I stumbled back, my hand instinctively reaching for the door. I had to get out to escape the nightmare that awaited me. Section 6. Trapped. But it was too late. As I turned to flee, the door slammed shut with a deafening boom. I spun around, my heart pounding against my ribs. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim light, was my girlfriend. Her eyes, usually sparkling with warmth, now burned with a cold, predatory hunger. In her hand, she held the antique pocket knife, its blade glinting ominously in the dim light. "You weren't supposed to see that, baby," she purred, her voice a chilling melody that sent shivers down my spine. A slow, cruel smile spread across her lips. "But don't worry," she added, taking a step toward me. "Now you can be a part of my collection forever." Section 1. Frozen with fear, her words laced with a terrifying tenderness pierced through the fog of my terror. I stood there paralyzed as she approached, her footsteps silent on the wooden floor. The metallic scent of blood, stronger now, wafted from her, mingling with her perfume, creating a sickeningly sweet aroma. The antique knife in her hand, a gift-turned morbid promise, seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The polished bone handle, warm from her touch, reflected the dim light, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I could only stare, mesmerized by the macabre beauty of it all. My voice, trapped in my throat, refused to form words. A strangled whimper escaped my lips, a pathetic plea for mercy I knew she wouldn't heed. She was a predator toying with her prey, savoring the fear that rolled off me in waves. "Why?" I finally choked out, the word a dry rasp in the silence. Her smile widened, revealing a flash of white teeth sharp as shards of glass. It wasn't a smile of amusement, but one of pure, unadulterated pleasure. "Don't you see, darling," she said, her voice a silken whisper that did nothing to soothe the terror clawing at my insides. Her eyes, usually filled with warmth, were now cold, calculating, like those of a predator sizing up its kill. "You're special," she continued, circling me slowly, her gaze never leaving mine. "The others, they were just practice. But you," she paused, her breath warm against my ear, "you are my masterpiece." "Our love," she breathed, her fingers tracing a chillingly tender path down my cheek. "It deserves to be preserved, immortalized." Her touch, once a source of comfort, now burned like acid, searing her madness onto my skin. She spoke of love, but her words were laced with a chilling detachment, a terrifying disconnect between emotion and action. Her love was a twisted obsession, a macabre desire to possess, to control, to ultimately obliterate the line between life and death. "Don't you want to be with me forever, darling?" she asked, her voice taking on a pleading tone that did nothing to mask the underlying threat. "Don't you want to be a part of something beautiful, something eternal?" Her words, laced with a chilling logic, sent a fresh wave of terror through me. I knew I had to escape, to break free from the web of her madness before it consumed me entirely. But how? The door was locked, the windows barred. I was trapped in her twisted game of love and death. My gaze darted around the room, searching for a weapon, an escape route, anything that could offer a glimmer of hope in the face of her chilling certainty. There had to be a way out. There had to be. My hand brushed against something cold and hard. The antique candlestick, a gift from our first Christmas together, lay forgotten on a shelf. It wouldn't be much, but it was something. As she moved closer, the scent of blood intensified, choking me, suffocating me. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, held a terrifying mixture of excitement and anticipation. This was it. This was the moment my life, my existence, would be reduced to another trophy in her macabre collection. "Don't fight it, darling," she crooned, her voice a hypnotic lullaby that did nothing to soothe the frantic beating of my heart. "Let it all go. Let me take care of you." I gripped the candlestick tighter, its cold metal grounding me in the face of her consuming madness. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the approaching storm. This was it. The final act. Fight, or become another victim in her twisted love story. Adrenaline surged through my veins, a primal scream building in my chest. This wasn't love, it was madness. I wouldn't become another forgotten face in her collection. As she lunged, her eyes burning with a terrifying light, I swung the candlestick with all my might. The impact reverberated through the room, the force of it greater than I could have imagined. It connected with her temple, a sickening thud that echoed in the silence. She stumbled back, a look of surprise, of almost comical betrayal, flashing across her face. But the blow, powerful as it was, only seemed to fuel her rage. She touched her temple, her fingers coming away stained crimson. A low growl, feral and dangerous, rumbled deep in her chest. She charged, her movements no longer graceful but fueled by a primal, animalistic fury. I swung again and again, each blow a desperate attempt to stave off the inevitable. But she was relentless, her strength amplified by a terrifying, unwavering purpose. She knocked the candlestick from my grasp, sending it clattering across the hardwood floor. I stumbled back, tripping over the open chest, and landed hard against the wall. She was on me in an instant, her knee pinning me down, the point of the knife tracing a burning path across my throat. "You should have been a good boy," she whispered, her voice a husky rasp that sent shivers down my spine. And then her lips crashed against mine, a bruising, desperate kiss that tasted of copper and fear. Her weight shifted, a sudden lightness replacing the crushing pressure on my chest. I opened my eyes, my vision blurry, disoriented. She was gone, vanished. I scrambled to my feet, my lungs burning, my body screaming in protest. The room was silent, the only sound the frantic pounding of my own heart. The chest lay open, its gruesome contents scattered across the floor. But something was different. The photographs, the locks of hair, they were gone. Only the journal remained, its pages filled with her chilling confessions. And then I saw it. Pinned to the wall, held in place by the antique pocket knife, was a single photograph. My photograph. Beneath it, scrawled in her familiar handwriting, a message that sent a chill down my spine, a terrifying promise that echoed in the silence. Our love story is just beginning.